Most people think private investigators spend their days sitting in parking lots with a thermos of bad coffee, photographing cheating spouses, and sometimes that's exactly what it is. But every investigator I've ever known, every one, has at least one case they don't talk about at dinner. One case that changed something behind their eyes. One case that made them realize the world holds far darker corners than most people ever see. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 of those cases. These are real investigations, real evidence, real moments when a routine assignment crossed into something no one was prepared for. Stay with me until the end, because the last story, I still think about it. Every single time I drive past a stretch of empty Michigan forest. Story 1, The Woman Being Followed. My name is Dale Hutchins, 31 years as a licensed private investigator, most of them out of Billings, Montana. In the spring of 2019, a man named Gerald Pruitt walked into my office. Mid-50s, clean-shaven, the kind of guy who irons his jeans. He said his wife, Carol, had been acting strange for 3 months, coming home late, locking her phone face down on the counter, taking long drives on Sunday afternoons with no explanation. He wanted me to follow her, thought she was seeing someone. I took the case, routine domestic surveillance. I'd done it 1,000 times. The first 2 days, nothing unusual. Carol Pruitt drove to the pharmacy, to a friend's house, to the grocery store. She was a careful driver, always used her blinkers, looked both ways twice at intersections. The kind of woman you notice because she moves through the world so deliberately. On the 3rd day, she drove out on Route 212, heading east toward the Crow Reservation. Wide open country, sky like a painting. I hung back a 1/4 mile, easy to do on those long Montana roads. That's when I noticed the gray pickup truck. It had been 2 cars behind me since Billings. Now, with the road nearly empty, it was still there. Same distance, same pace, not passing, not pulling over. I slowed down. The truck slowed down. I sped up slightly. The truck matched me. My first thought was that I'd made a mistake, that Gerald Pruitt had hired a second investigator to watch me watch his wife. It happens more than you'd think with paranoid clients, but something felt wrong about it. I called a colleague, had her run the plate from a distance the next morning. The truck was registered to a man named Warren Tully. No connection to the Pruitts at all. Warren Tully, age 62, from a town called Roundup, about 60 miles north. Here's where it got strange. Carol wasn't driving to meet a lover. Over the next 4 days, I realized she was driving in circles, looping through small towns, parking for 20 minutes, then driving home, like she was trying to shake a tail. Like she already knew someone was following her. I called Gerald, told him what I'd observed. Not about the truck yet, just the driving patterns. He went quiet on the phone for a long moment. She's been scared of something, he said finally. She won't tell me what. I started running Warren Tully through the databases I have access to. What I found stopped me cold. Warren Tully had a restraining order filed against him by a woman in Wyoming in 2014, then another one in Idaho in 2016. Both women had eventually moved. One had changed her name. I pulled Carol Pruitt's maiden name from her marriage certificate, Carol Ann Myers, from Sheridan, Wyoming. Warren Tully had lived in Sheridan, Wyoming until 2013. I called the Billings Police Department that afternoon. I didn't wait. I gave them everything. The surveillance logs, the photos of the truck, the restraining order history, the connection to Carol's hometown. 2 officers brought Carol in quietly the next day, sat her down, showed her the photos of the gray pickup. She broke down completely. Warren Tully had been stalking Carol Myers. Carol Pruitt, for 11 years. She had moved 3 times, changed jobs twice. The restraining orders hadn't stopped him. She had never told Gerald because she was afraid the information would put him in danger. Tully was picked up 2 days later, parked on a dirt road 300 yards from the Pruitt property. In his truck, investigators found a binder. Inside the binder were photographs, years of photographs of Carol going about her daily life. Every city she'd lived in, every home. Gerald Pruitt never should have hired me to follow his wife. He should have asked her why she always locked the doors twice before bed. Story 2. The Storage Unit Assignment. I go by Ray Castillo. Semi-retired now, but for 24 years I worked investigations out of Tucson. Missing persons, insurance fraud, corporate work, you name it. In October of 2021, a woman named Patricia Elmore contacted me about her brother, Dennis. He was 58 years old, a commercial real estate developer, recently divorced. 6 weeks earlier, he had told Patricia he was taking a trip to Sedona to clear his head. He never came back. No credit card activity, no phone calls, no social media. The police had taken a report, but with no evidence of foul play. It sat low on the priority list. Patricia wasn't satisfied. She hired me. I started where most missing persons cases start, with the people around them. Dennis's ex-wife cooperated minimally. His business partner said he'd been acting distracted for months. 2 of his friends mentioned he'd recently asked them, separately, whether they thought a person could ever really start over clean. Start over clean. That phrase circled in my mind. I pulled his financial records through proper channels. Patricia had power of attorney. What I found was a man slowly converting assets to cash over the past 8 months, selling off small investments, clearing out a savings account, stopping automatic bill pay, not all at once, quietly, methodically. Then I found a payment for $180 to a storage facility on the south side of Tucson. Desert Sun Storage, made in cash, 8 months prior. No corresponding entry in his regular records. I drove out there on a Thursday morning. The facility manager was cooperative. After I showed him the paperwork from Patricia, he led me to Unit 114 with a master key. The rolling door went up, and I stood there for a moment, just processing what I was seeing. The unit was clean, organized. Inside were 17 bankers' boxes, each labeled in Dennis Elmore's neat handwriting. There was a folding chair, a battery-powered lantern, and a small folding table. On the table was a 3-ring binder and a prepaid burner phone, still in its packaging. The binder. I put on gloves before I opened it. I don't know what made me do that. Instinct, I suppose. Inside were documents going back to 1987. Bank statements for an account I had never seen in his financial records. Photographs of a woman I didn't recognize. A hand-drawn map of a property in rural New Mexico. A name, Ellen Marie Voss, written repeatedly in different contexts. As a beneficiary, as a contact, as something labeled simply, her. In the back of the binder was a plain white envelope. Inside the envelope was a birth certificate. A child, born 1988. Mother, Ellen Marie Voss. Father, Dennis Ray Elmore. A daughter that, as far as Patricia knew, did not exist. I sat down in that folding chair for a long time. The 17 boxes contained the evidence of an entire parallel life Dennis Elmore had maintained for over 30 years. A woman he'd been supporting financially in New Mexico. A daughter he'd helped through college, listed under a different last name in all the documents. He hadn't disappeared. He had finally chosen. I found Dennis Elmore 2 weeks later, living quietly in a small house outside of Albuquerque. He answered the door in a flannel shirt, a cup of coffee in his hand, and he didn't look surprised to see me. "Patricia sent you," he said. It wasn't a question. I told him yes. He nodded slowly. "Tell her I'm fine. Tell her I'm sorry. And tell her some things are too heavy to carry any longer." He closed the door gently. I sat in my car for a while before I drove away. It wasn't a crime. No one had been hurt. But I've thought many times since then about those 17 boxes. About a man who spent 30 years building a secret so carefully, and about what it must have felt like to finally let it breathe. Story 3. The Cabin in the North Woods. I spent 15 years working investigations out of Traverse City, Michigan. Name's Tom Brower. I've worked custody cases, fraud cases, a few things I probably shouldn't have. Nothing prepared me for the Harlan Voss case. In September of 2020, a woman named Susan Voss called me from downstate Detroit. Her husband, Harlan, was 61 years old, retired, quiet, kept to himself. In July, he had purchased a remote cabin property in Emmett County, about 15 miles outside of a small town called Alanson. He told Susan he needed a few weeks alone to deal with some personal things. That was 11 weeks before her phone call. He had stopped answering his phone after the third week. She had called the Emmett County Sheriff's Office. Deputies had done a wellness check, found the cabin locked. No signs of disturbance, no signs of Harlan. His truck was in the driveway. His phone went to voicemail. Susan hired me. I drove up on a Tuesday in late September. The trees were just beginning to turn, orange and deep red against a gray sky. Beautiful country, if you're not there looking for someone who doesn't want to be found. Or worse, someone who can no longer make that choice. The cabin was at the end of a 2-track road, nearly a mile off the highway. Small, weathered brown, surrounded on 3 sides by dense second-growth forest. The sheriff had a key from the property sale. I went back to the county office, explained the situation, and a deputy agreed to accompany me out for a second look. Inside, the cabin was dim and smelled of old wood and something else I couldn't immediately identify. A faint chemical smell. Not unpleasant, but sharp. The deputy and I moved through slowly. Kitchen, dishes in the drying rack, food in the refrigerator. Some of it spoiled, some still okay. Coffee can half full. The refrigerator had been plugged in the whole time. Bedroom, bed made, clothes in the closet, Harlan's wallet on the dresser, Michigan driver's license inside. A man doesn't go anywhere voluntarily without his wallet. The deputy stepped outside to call it in. I stood in the bedroom doorway and looked at the room again. Something was bothering me. I couldn't name it. Then I realized the closet. It was full of clothes, but they were all the same kind of clothes. Identical flannel shirts in 3 colors, 5 pairs of the same khaki pants in the same waist size, 12 pairs of the same white socks in a neat row on the shelf. Not the wardrobe of a man who had packed for a temporary stay. These were purchased all at once to outfit a place he intended to be a long time. Behind the cabin, a narrow footpath led into the tree line. I followed it with a flashlight, maybe 300 yards into the woods, until I found a natural clearing. In the clearing was a fire ring with fresh ash. Around the fire ring, arranged in a careful circle, were 11 hand-carved wooden markers. Each marker had a name on it. I didn't recognize 9 of the names, but 2 of them I did, because I had spent 3 days reading everything Susan Voss had sent me about her husband's life. One name was his father's, the other was his brother's. Both men had died, I knew from Susan, years apart. Both deaths ruled accidental. I photographed everything and drove back to town. That night in my motel room, I ran every name on those markers through every database I could access. It took most of the night. 7 of the 11 Names appeared in public records, connected to Emmett County or the surrounding counties going back decades. Accident reports, drowning incidents, a hunting accident in 1998, a house fire in 2003. Each case closed, each death ruled accidental or undetermined. Harlan Voss was never found. Not his body, not a note, not a trace beyond that cabin, and those 11 markers standing quiet in the Michigan woods. The official conclusion was that he had wandered into the forest and succumbed to exposure. The case was closed, but I've never closed it in my own mind because I keep returning to one simple question. Was Harlan Voss building a memorial, or was he keeping score? Private investigators are hired to find things. That's the job. You dig until you find the truth, and then you deliver it. But the longer you do this work, the more you realize that some truths were buried deliberately, hidden behind locked doors, inside storage units. At the end of overgrown footpaths in the deep woods, people build lives around secrets, sometimes to protect themselves, sometimes to protect others, and sometimes for reasons that you sincerely hope, you're misreading, because the alternative is something you can't unknow. If you enjoyed these disturbing true private investigator horror stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real-life horror every week.